You're listening to Honey and Hustle, a video podcast that inspires the dreamers, creators, and hustlers to make a business from their passions. I'm Angela Hollowell, and I'm a visual storyteller based in Durham, North Carolina. I sit down with creative entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders, and small business owners as they share their stories, the lessons they've learned throughout their careers, and how they've worked to make a positive impact. Hey everyone, we are filming season 3 of the Honey and Hustle podcast live at the Durham Bottling Co. right in downtown Durham. We're about to get into a great conversation, but before we do that, I'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to share this episode with someone who you think might get some value from it. Feel free to tag me on the podcast on social media, and I'll be sure to put those links on the video and in the description below. If you're listening to the show, please consider leaving us a review on Podchaser, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. It helps others find the show and lets me know how I'm doing at this video podcast thing. If you'd like to support the show, be sure to check out our affiliate links, shop our merch, and subscribe to the Honeypot newsletter and this YouTube channel, all at the links in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, we met through music, obviously. Was a concert photographer, still do that sometimes, and you guys are incredible musicians who do it full time. Yes, Waking April, everybody, based here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So you guys, this is also /music talk / couples therapy.
Yes, exactly. That's what we hired you for. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
definitely
we got a laundry list.
Well, before we get to that, I do want to talk about, like, you guys met in high school, you guys were able to progress together, grow together, create together. What has that process been like since you guys met so young and have grown into the duo that is now Waking April?
I'll take it, yeah. Okay, so we met when we were like 16. Younger than that, because when
15,
we started dating, you couldn't drive on our dates. And
Had a crush on you before we were dating.
yeah. So here's the thing about like high school relationships and all that. I love Alex very much, and I would not tell anybody that like this is the way to go. Like you should marry your high school sweetheart, because I think we got super lucky. We grew into compatible people. So there's that. I mean, when we started dating, you were in a high school band and I was selling your merch. Yeah. So it's definitely been a journey. Like I think we've just let each other like grow and change a lot. And that's been really healthy.
I think there was like a conversation we had in college at some point when we were together. And like, I don't remember what it was about, but I think we were both just like, neither of us are where we were before, the way we grew up and everything, but we happen to be in the same spot now. So it was like, okay, I think this is gonna work. So that kind of like progression and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, just on the personal stuff, I think that's how that played out. Again, like very, very lucky, very, very just serendipitous how it's not just that we grew into compatible people, it's also we like kind of grew at the same pace, and changed at the same pace. And so there was no like overnight like, this is me now. It was both of us kind of like
Progressively.
Yeah. Which again, very, very fortunate, very lucky. And I don't think, this those are hard dice to roll. So. Yeah.
But it worked out, and now you guys create music together. So what has that process start? Like, how did that conversation start? Like, hey, do you want to?
We've done everything ass backwards.
Absolutely.
Like, so backwards. Because the conversation should go like, wow, we're playing music together and this is really fun. Maybe we should like perform or something. And instead, it was like, let's be in a band together. Cool. I booked us a show. We have no songs. I mean, it's been like...
To be clear, that was 100% me. I was like, hey, Bethany, do you want to be in a band? And you were like, maybe. I have some thoughts. I was like, great, you can tell them to me at rehearsal tomorrow.
Right.
We're doing this. And we don't have any songs. Like, all right, it doesn't matter. Like, we'll figure it out. Who cares about the music?
For a long time, like, I described our whole existence as like when you're running out the door and trying to put your shoe on at the same time.
Yeah,
like
just
that's
kind
how
of a
everything felt. It was just like, how does this work?
Yeah.
So yeah, we started playing music together, like booked a show, and we're like, oh no, we have to write a bunch of songs, and it's sort of like for a long time was like catch up backwards weird. And
there was no concept. There was
Right.
no like,
That's what
hey,
it
if
is.
we were to be in a band, what would the music be like? It was really like my high school band fell apart because they do, and I was playing bass for another band pretty regularly in college, and I was just like, oh wait, this isn't quite right. Like I still need to have my original thing. And then I was like, hey Bethany, do you want to do this together? And she was like, I don't think you said no with that first.
no, I didn't say no. No.
I remember us at one point saying like, okay, we're dating, let's never be in a band together.
Because that doesn't usually
never
end
works.
well.
Yeah. So yeah, and then it was a house show, so it wasn't even like a big deal. It was just like I just had this conversation with somebody about a house, and they were like, hey, I want to do a house show, and I was like, cool, I'm in a band.
You just came out.
Yes.
So yeah, like there was so it was just a bunch of leftover songs and genre from my high school band, which was pretty much like a emo rock band. Like there wasn't a lot of what we sound like now is really far gone from what we started out was, because it was just, a pseudo riff rock that I had been sitting on and wanted to keep going. So
So really, Waking April as a band has been about 4 different genres, because like we started as that and then, changed and changed and changed. And I would say not until like 2019 when we released Stretch did we really feel like we knew what our goal was and what our genre was, and even that was the first time that I felt like I'm excited about the music that we're making. Before that, I was just excited about the idea of being a professional musician. Like, yeah, that sounds great and fun, and playing any music is better than playing no music, but I wasn't in love with the music we were making until then.
Also, I mean, this is kind of, I make very long answers out of simple questions, but part of it was like Bethany's major in college was extremely demanding.
I was a piano major, music major.
Yeah.
So I was having to practice like all the
She
time.
practiced literally 20 hours a week. She had like a log that she had to fill in addition to full-time classes. And so the kind of the negotiation we landed on was like, okay, well, all I'm really going to ask out of you is like show up to rehearsal, sing the songs, play your parts, whatever. And we were a full band at that point, so there was a couple other members. And so I did all the songwriting, I did all the creative, I was kind of the creative director or whatever, and she was pretty much just sang some of the songs and played. We weren't like a
I didn't
co-writing
really have
thing.
any creative input at the time because I didn't have any creative energy at the time. Like,
Yeah.
it just wasn't in me.
And then when that kind of iteration broke off, and it was just the two of us suddenly, we kind of kept that model for a really long time, just because that's what we had been doing. And so like I wrote everything, and then we had another member as well, and that was my job, was I wrote everything. I wrote all the drum parts, I wrote all the synth parts, I wrote all the vocals, I wrote all the lyrics, I wrote all the guitar parts. I just wrote everything. And part of why I think Stretch was so important when it came out is because the first time I was like, I wrote the thing, and then Bethany was like, no, let me take a stab at the melody and the lyrics, and she did, and it was great. And it was, like you're saying, like it's kind of the first time it was like, feels like your fingerprints were actually on a thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I think it's been, we were the old way for so long. I think it's been kind of hard to figure out how to be prolific with the duo writing. but that's kind of where we are now, and it's a lot better than it was, for sure.
So you said a word, prolific, which is now that people are trying to monetize their writing, whether that's songwriting, whether that's writing for Twitter, writing blogs, content writing for organizations and stuff like that, and outlets. In a lot of ways, people are trying to become prolific writers and making their mark in that space with, clever alliterations and just really approaching the writing process differently and how they disseminate their work differently. So during the pandemic, obviously the music industry was, just like...
Oh, it was really fun to be a musician. I was like, every day I would wake up and I'd be like, I am so glad I chose to be a professional musician with my life during this pandemic. This is just so great.
Worst time for a musician. And so it kind of, I don't even want to use the word pivot because I feel like so much, like there's pivoting, but then there's like, okay, where are we going to pivot to, right?
Yeah.
It's a pirouette is what it is. Because you're just a dancing ballerina. You're just spinning around.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you can't just say, oh, just pivot to do something else.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like an adjustment is going to have to be made, and I'm going to have to make some decisions about what this is going to look like until it's safe for me to get back to doing things the way that I was doing things, and approaching the creative process the way it was, and finding motivation at a time where it's very, very hard to be motivated and very, very hard to kind of believe that there's an end in sight even now in February 2022. Yeah. So what has your process been like since the pandemic, now that you guys are living together, you guys are married now, and you're like, okay, like we have a system that we want to continue, want to grow, but we don't really have a test audience all the time that we can just tap into, like at a show or at a house show where people can give us direct feedback on what they're thinking, and we can learn and grow from there. Like, what has your approach been during the pandemic to the creative process?
It's very interesting because just the way that the kind of cards fell is we... In 2019, we released Stretch and a couple other songs. We kind of found our footing. We're like, okay, this is the genre we are. This is how we're going to do things. This is what we sound like. And translating that to the live show, there's only two of us, and we try. We're electropop, we're synth pop, so there's a lot of sound that happens. But it's just the two of us, and we try not to lean on backing tracks too much outside of just drums. So. It's a lot of effort to kind of find that balance between like, okay, we don't want to play karaoke, but we also want to have the full sound, all that stuff. So there's a lot of math that goes into just the actual live show, and a lot of tech that goes into the live show. And that's where our focus was for most of 2019. And we were gearing up to go on a tour in 2020. And that we had just put so much effort into the live show, making it slick, making it efficient,
energetic, and exciting. Like
solving all these problems.
We really put so much energy into the live show, and then when 2020 hit, it was like it felt like all of that was like not pointless, but like obviously not something that we could use.
Yeah,
for a
and
while. So
it was like you're saying pivot and adjustment. It's like. It wasn't just like, oh, we don't get to go on the live show. It's also like, that's literally where we've been putting all of our energy for the past like 18 months. And we didn't have a bank of songs that we could go record. We weren't working towards a big, amount of streaming content or anything like that. It was all about the live show. And so I think it took us longer than maybe other artists to kind of figure out what to do during the quarantine, because
I'll say also, like, I was so amazed with some of the artists that I saw just, not to use the word pivot, but just be so creative with what they were doing with their time, with their resources that they had, and I was really amazed by some of the stuff that I saw. For us personally, like, we did a couple of live stream concerts, which are fine, but at the end of the day, very weird, because you kind of just feel like you're playing music in your living room.
I added an applause track after every song, so it would just like, we were done with the song, and I hit this button, and people go, woo! I was like, oh
my God,
thank you. You're so kind.
But,
you're so kind.
Like, creatively, again, like, the whole idea of creative energy, I felt so zapped. Like I had no creative energy, and something that I had to tell myself over and over again in the really, really depressing parts of 2020 before there was a vaccine available or anything was like, we're all collectively living through this really traumatic thing, and it is okay to not feel like all this creative energy just because you have time on your hands doesn't mean that you have to be super creative. Like, you know, you would see people posting like motivational things like, well, now you have the time to do XYZ, and if you don't do it, then you never really wanted to. And it's like, that's not true, because you have time, but you're just like surviving.
Yeah,
you know?
Existing burned a lot more calories than before. And also, I will say, like, we are full-time musicians, but part of that income base is we teach piano lessons. And I'm very very grateful we were able to do this, but we had taught piano lessons on Zoom instead of in person. And so we would split into different rooms in our tiny little townhouse and could hear each other. And internet was always spotty and whatever. But so we were able to do that, but it's like, we were teaching and there was nothing else to do. And teaching over Zoom was so exhausting. Because teaching, I mean, one-on-one by itself is pretty energy.
Intense.
Yeah, it's pretty draining. But then doing it on Zoom, when it's like, okay, I'm out of my element, I don't know this move set, plus I'm dealing with technology that's not reliable, plus like I literally cannot hear if you're playing dynamics right now because the technology's not there, and the only reason we're doing this is because there's a pandemic, and then it's like that whole stress like all the time.
So I feel like
very zapping, very, very tiring.
Draining on your ears, draining on your musical energy, your creative energy. The point being, it took us a while to find our footing, but we ended up recording a batch of songs in 2020, and the only like good thing I feel like for us in all of that was that it did sort of force us to realize what we were able to do on our own, because we were not planning on doing this, but we recorded those songs in our townhouse. We made a recording booth out of our closet. We just like DIY'd a whole bunch of stuff and then sent it over to an engineer.
Yeah, Xover Studios
to like mix and master everything. And I didn't know we could do that until we had to. So that was cool. And I do feel like we got to, within the past few months, we've been able to refine our writing process.
Yeah, again, we always do everything backwards, right? So for 2020, it was so, like, we were so hurt by the fact that we couldn't do live shows. It felt like we were still just trying to find opportunities to do that. We did live streams, like you said. We also played at
a drive-in
theater in what's the town? Henderson. And yeah, so like we kept trying to find opportunities to play, right? Instead of just buckling and recording. And now, literally right now, what we're doing is, instead of focusing on the live show this year, we're doing a bunch of recordings, which is almost a guarantee that everything's going to open back up and be fine.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yes, you're welcome. That's our gift to the world. So, yeah, I really do feel like we're on a kick right now where our creative roles are not only defined but also like being implemented, and we're kind of holding each other to account and like meeting deadlines and all this stuff. Because it is slightly less exhausting to exist right now. So I really feel like we have the energy to do that.
I mean, this is so much more of an answer than you wanted, but
we like to talk.
We realized, and we talked a lot about the idea of doing things in seasons. So, you know, we had that season where we were really focusing on the live show. We've been in a season of recording and writing. And so just like recognizing that it's okay to focus your energy in one place. And if some things aren't getting as much attention as maybe they should, like, okay, well, this is just for a season. We can turn to that in a little bit and make sure that we're spending time and energy on the live show. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you guys are both full-time. Did you guys immediately go into full-time musicianship after graduating college? How was that?
Hard.
Okay.
We both have similar journeys, but actually pretty different in execution.
So my degree is in piano pedagogy specifically, which is teaching piano. And right after college, I got a job working at a private school teaching piano lessons, and stayed there for a couple of years. But I was originally more heavy on the teaching side, and have recently sort of found that balance of like doing that and being able to perform. Because when I was working at that private school, like I had to be there at like 8 a.m. and
it's not a time
some point,
for us folk.
Well, at some point I was like, hang on, I did not get a music degree and decide to be a professional musician so that I could have a 7 a.m. commute every day. Like this was not what I intended.
Yeah.
So
I remember the day you decided to quit. I was like, we just ran the numbers and we were just like, oh yeah, no, you don't need to be doing this.
As financially worth it as I thought it was.
Yeah, and you were, oh my God, you were just back to your old ways as soon. It was great. So my thing was I have an English literature degree, and it is the most mediocre white guy attitude. I was like, oh yeah, I can teach piano lessons too.
Well, I will say, hold on. In your defense, Alex's parents are both fabulous professional musicians and piano teachers, and his dad is the dean of fine arts at the college where I went, and so it's not like you had no experience.
Well, I had no experience. I had a lot of exposure.
You had
I was around it.
Exposure to it.
I just the bravado of just like yeah, me too. I can probably do that. And she does charge more than me. I'll have you know. So.
Well, I have a degree, so.
So.
This is getting into so many things.
Right. So I popped out of college and I found myself in an extremely fortunate living situation where I was living at home through my second 2 years of college to save money on boarding and stuff. So I didn't have a lot of school debt or any school debt, and I found a cheap situation. I was living with it was 4 humans and 5 cats, 2 bearded dragons, 2 leopard geckos, and a colony of Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Was the lineup.
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
Only
and I'm
the
not going to
humans
say
were-
where it was because I just remembered that we were never allowed to have pets. So if the landlord ever,
your apartment complex.
we called it the cave.
Because it had very few windows.
Very, very bad lighting. So yeah, someone was moving out, and I slipped in, and I was friends with everybody, and it was like rotating door of characters and stuff, and it was a really good time. But anyway, the point is it was very cheap. It was very cheap, and I was able to do the whole music thing because my overhead was just so low. I started teaching a couple of students here and there. And then I started playing side gigs a lot.
Did a lot of church music, did a
So
lot of side gigs.
Even though Waking April's been around for a long time, most people who have seen me perform have seen me play bass. Just because that was my bread maker for so.
Bread maker? Breadwinner? Bacon
That's a
maker.
thing.
Money maker.
Bread maker? I'm going to say bread maker.
Go for it.
I like it. That was my bread maker with which I made bread. And by bread, I mean
Money.
That was my money breading. They were the panko breadcrumbs to my. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I played a lot of bass for money. Played with an artist named Jason Adamo, who's fantastic. He was at the Delta Ray show. And
But you always said after college that you never wanted to get a full-time job because you knew that you could not ever not do that.
And I had other jobs. I came up doing restaurant stuff, and I was a barista for a really long time. And when that kind of ended and I started teaching, I was still in college, and I was just like, okay, if I go back to part-time work or part-time jobs, I'm never going to leave that. Just because there's security there's all this stuff. And I was just like, I'm going to try to not need to.
And so far you haven't needed to.
So far. But teaching is a big reason why. Just because the volatility of live stuff is and I could talk about this forever, but it's when you actually break down the hours and the money you get from like a bar gig or something, which is nice paying, you're making a couple $100 a head for 3 or 4 hours of music, but then it's an hour of travel and then it's an hour of load in and all this stuff. You kind of break it down. It's like, oh, that's like a 6 to 8 hour day for maybe $100 something, and it's like that's not actually that much. And there's no consistency with it either. So but all that to say, I was able to do that, and like you said, I played for a lot of churches, played for a lot of artists, played for us, and played for I guess that's it. That was pretty much anyone and anything. And then so it's just kind of been like a balance with that. I started teaching more, and really recently I've been like, I don't think I should spend as much time doing the side gig stuff because
of all that stuff that you just mentioned.
So
I will say imposter syndrome is something that I have struggled with a lot, and something I've come to realize is like making it as an artist, as a musician, you don't ever feel like you've made it. You feel like you are constantly making it. And it's like, like I said, like, so far you haven't had to get a real job. And I think that I will always feel like that no matter how stable we get in our music making career. It's always just kind of like, so far this is working. Let's keep doing it. It's very weird.
Yeah. So, a couple things here.
Yes.
You said you crushed the numbers. The first thing you did before quitting your job was like, is this financially viable for me to continue doing in light of what I would like to be putting energy and effort and time towards? And once you ran the numbers, you're like, okay, I am ready to make the leap, even if it means making a temporary pay cut while I make up this money that I've been losing. That was number one. The second thing that you said was, well, he's never had a real job, or he never had to get a real job.
Not a full-time, not like a grown-up job, I guess.
Are you not grown-ups?
Oh, that's a complicated question.
Oh, no.
No.
I don't feel like one
fair.
for sure.
I look 20, so I mean, I can't even. But I'm just saying, there is this still, even now, even among, I would say, musicians, athletes, people who are just paid when they get to a certain level, obscene amounts of money. That, it's still not a real job. It's like it's like a thing that you do for a while the money is good, and then even if you do make it, it's like such a small percentage of people that you really shouldn't try. And it's like, well, okay, there are people that are at that top level of the food chain in terms of creating and being an athlete and that sort of thing. But there are also people who are like mid-career, like mid-level people who are making a living off of it and don't ever have to get that big because they make enough to have the life that they want. And so, in that sense, is it not a career? And you left it a real job. So it's like, I don't know.
And as you're saying that, I do kind of feel like that makes it sound like I'm like, being a musician isn't a real job. And I don't mean that. That's how I feel personally. And I see people doing exactly what you're talking about, making a living out of it, which I would call a career, and I'm so impressed by that. I think that it is absolutely worthwhile work because it's contributing to society in such an important way.
What do people do over the pandemic? They stream their favorite artists.
Exactly.
They watch Netflix. They watch YouTube.
I think the real job thing is like, Puritan capitalist terminology. The word should be typical. It's not a typical job.
Not a typical job.
And whether that's like, at an office or, corporate, whatever, or working at a restaurant or, in the typical ways people make money. I think the real job thing is like, that's my anxiety. That's the
devil on your shoulder.
There is some anxiety behind like being a full-time creator because you can have a certain level of stability in that like your bills are paid and stuff, but then like the floor could drop out at any minute, and you're like, okay, the rubber's hitting the road a little bit.
I didn't think we were gonna go this route, but it's interesting. I'm always fascinated by like generations and where like cultural events and historical events hit generations, and like so like we're on the younger side of millennials, and so the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009 hit us, or at least I won't speak for you, but for me it was like, it hit right when I was in high school, kind of making some decisions about like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to go to school? Blah, 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 blah. And I remember seeing my good friend's dad, who had a good job at IBM, 5 kids, stay-at-home mom, homeschool family. Exactly, that's the reaction, right? This used to be a thing that you could do, and lost the job because some jack-offs in some jabronis on Wall Street fucked around with some like bubbles, and it's like I don't understand how any of that worked. I did not vote for any of the policies that led to that, and also there's no guarantee that won't happen again.
Because your friend's dad did everything.
He did everything right, and then his wife had to start working at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with Chick-fil-A. Love Chick-fil-A. Well, there's some stuff wrong with Chick-fil-A. Yeah. There's some serious stuff wrong with Chick-fil-A. My point is, it was like going back to the real job. It's like, oh, even if you do everything right, stuff completely out of your control can just completely fuck you over. So might as well just do the thing.
Yeah, I feel like even having a typical job or a real job is like, there is a certain level of uncertainty there because you really don't have say so over how much you get paid, when you get a raise, if you get a raise, if you're going to get fired, if you don't get fired.
Especially in right to work states.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I mean, like there's a certain level of uncertainty there. You just know that if you show up while you are employed, you're going to get a check and you're going to get benefits and your taxes are going to be taken care of for you and all these other things. So it's like there is a certain level of, I would say, stability and a lack of responsibility that you have.
Interesting.
In terms of like mental responsibility to really be aware of like what's happening with your position and your space in that organization. Whereas with being a full-time creator, being a full-time entrepreneur, owning a business, running a product-based business of some kind, it's like you're aware of everything. You're aware of where every dollar goes. You're aware of all your clients. You're aware of all your overhead. Every dollar. But then you have something. You're like, I just know that if I show up, I'm gonna have food on my table for my 5 kids. My wife won't have to work.
Yeah.
Our mortgage is gonna be paid. Things are gonna be fine. And then one day it's like, well, where's the money gonna come from?
Right.
How am I gonna make that money? And if you're never really in a position where you've had to think about where is this money truly coming from, I think it makes it harder for people who maybe were in that mid to senior level that did get like the rug pulled under them at that time, and now they're like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I've never had to think about it now.
Yeah.
Whereas people who have had the reverse happen, where they've had that 9-to-5 or a part-time something, where they were like, okay, I've done that, and then now I'm aware of like where my money comes from and the things that I can do to help myself have a better chance of generating income. Now it's like if something happened like the pandemic, if I had to get a regular job again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, regular job. Even before I tried to rebalance my work, between teaching and performing, regardless, I kind of have always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I maybe am too much of a control freak or whatever, but I do like to be like in charge of my own schedule, in charge of my own responsibilities, and I just don't like being told what to do, kind of. So, but yeah, it's definitely that thing where you're aware of everything, and there's certainly good and bad things about that. All of the typical things you hear about with small business owners and like compartmentalization and work-life balance and whatever.
Does that exist?
What is the saying? If you find something you love, you will work harder than anybody else to make it financially viable. That's what.
Yeah, exactly.
And put in 80 hours a week like it's normal.
Yeah.
Small things.
Yes.
Well, unpaid hours too. That's the juicy stuff.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
Yeah, and I've thought about like, okay, what else would I do? What else, if I took a journey career path? And it's literally just like, I'm not good enough at anything else. Like I kind of put a lot of eggs
in one basket.
Yeah, and so.
But there's something to be said about going all in on it and not really leaving yourself space for a plan B, because I feel like when you leave yourself an out, when things get hard, you're gonna take it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, when you get uncomfortable, you're gonna take that out. Like, I can always go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part, like, I knew that about myself. That's part why I didn't let myself do that straight out of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of me leaving that original job I had was that we sat down together and not just ran the numbers, but we did what you call a bubble chart, which is like deciding, you know, what's my end goal here? What do I actually want to be doing? And I don't know if you remember that conversation, and I said the thing that I really, really wanted was freedom to travel, to make my own schedule, to just do what I wanted.
Yeah.
And working backwards and saying, okay, how do I get there? And the choice that was right in front of me was, you have to leave this job if you want that freedom one day. So,
And the cool thing, I don't know if you've ever done anything similar to this, but that exercise of like, here's the top thing, here's what I actually want, and then you end with a choice you can make like today or tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
And usually if you look at it and you're like, this seems really daunting, it's because whatever you put up top is not what you actually want to do.
Yeah.
And which is also very good to go through, you know, it's like, oh, I'd rather prefer security to freedom or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a good little thing. I should do one.
they're good to do every once in a while. Just make sure you're still.
I am the most projecty about like life advice and everything. Just like, well, you should do this. You should just do. I do it? No. I just sweat at night and can't sleep. That's what I do. I just sweat at night.
Okay. So, as musicians, you said you guys kind of have met down or have talked about Waking April now that you guys kind of settled on your style, settled on the dynamic that you guys have now as creators. So, what's next for Waking April?
I'm so
The
excited.
album, I mean, you know.
I'm so excited about it.
Actually,
Okay.
I talk too much.
Well, no, you don't. But the album we are writing and haven't started recording yet, but we will be recording a full-length album. I'm super excited because it's the first full-length album we've done. We've done some EPs and some single releases, and this is the first time that we are doing a full-length album. And part of the creative process that we've been working through has come about because of this. Because I said going into the album, if we want it to be 10 to 12 songs, I wanted to write 20 and have, you know, things that we could edit out.
Which means, Alex, go write 20 ideas.
Yes,
Go.
because you're the idea person, and then I come in. Yeah. But the songs that have come out of that, I'm so excited because I don't feel like any of them are obvious cuts. You know, I don't feel like, obviously we're not gonna make a 20-song album, but I don't feel like any of them are like stinkers.
My mom hasn't even said that about her children.
Oh, your mom is lovely. But yeah, I'm super excited about it. It's cool. I don't know what else to say. Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Like we're still in the process, you know, and we're kind of demoing things out, which is because of the nature of the music. Our songwriting process involves recording, just because there's a lot of like, it's not
design.
the design, what synthesizers we're using, what sounds we're using, what kind of
Drum tracks.
Yeah, it's pretty involved. It's not just like, okay, here's the bones of the song on an acoustic guitar, and then we'll go to the studio. It's like it takes a while. It's just a lot of craft, and so that's part of why we've never really been like able to crank stuff out. But I'm really liking the way everything's sounding, and we know we're going to be. It's not just going to be us. We're going to be pulling in some third parties, and
Alex has produced everything that we've put out so far, so we're looking into hiring a producer for this.
yeah, we've always engineered outside of our own studio, but this time we're going to actually have a producer, and that's going to be good. And and we're not we're trying to learn from our mistakes. We're not doing any kind of release date or any kind of promo work until it's like
Done.
Things are actually done. But we are. That's going to be happening at some point this year. But in addition to that, we're also going to spit out a couple of other releases kind of unrelated to the album. We have a song we recorded last year we're going to finally release. We're working on a fully fleshed out cover that we kind of teased. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Okay.
Some
It's
people
pretty
have guessed
yeah,
already,
it's
but-
pretty obvious. But And just a couple other recordings, hopefully some collaborations and remixes and stuff like that. Just kind of keep things
Fresh.
just keeping releasing up until the album kind of gets doubled down. And then we're also we're working on tours again and just kind of going up and down the East Coast. And
Nice.
we've kind of over the past few years we kind of discovered a few markets that we really want to work on and develop. And so Atlanta, DC, and New York, and
Philly.
Philadelphia.
So if you're in these cities, what they're
Love
saying is,
Philadelphia.
go see them at a show, hook them up with some shows, some So Far Sounds.
Totally.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you do
yeah.
like So Far Sounds. Okay, that was a gut check. That's
Yes, we've done a couple so far gigs. We've done like one in Raleigh.
One in Raleigh,
then-
2 in DC.
We've done one in Philly.
Mhm.
We've gone to one in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're great, especially for touring artists. Such a great way to get you in front of people who really love and care about music.
Yeah.
And those are fun too when we, because sometimes we'll do a strip set and break everything down.
We
and
will get
just
out
like,
that acoustic guitar.
yeah, and then it's very interesting when people have either seen us or then go see us
Yeah.
live because it's just so
Very different.
Yeah.
different interpretations of the songs. So that's kind
That was
of
literally
neat.
my thought. I was like, So Far Sounds is such a great place to like strip down a set.
Yeah.
Just give it to people raw and just kind of see how they react.
Yeah.
I feel like even like bigger artists, I feel like that's kind of what they have done in the past.
Mhm,
Yeah.
And I really love seeing that. Not that you guys aren't bigger artists, but it's also just kind of like, even during the pandemic, you kind of see how like all these people that we put on this pedestal and they go up in front of these big crowds. There's still just people who like at some point sat on their couch, wrote a song.
Totally.
Yeah.
They were like, I just want to put this out there, and this is not going to stop me, especially now that I have the money to maybe produce something remotely.
I do feel like the DIY recordings are so big now, and like because you just can. What if somebody at some point said like the laptop is the folk instrument of our generation? You know,
Because everybody has
everybody
one.
has, and
I mean,
like
not
there's
everybody
there's
has
great
laptop, but-
recording software for free that you can just
Yeah.
record stuff.
Yeah.
So
And I will also say about So Far and those kind of stripped down acoustic sets, something that we always try to keep in mind with our songwriting, even with all of the sound design and the drum tracks, is like
the bleep bloops is what they're
The bleep
technically
bloops.
referred to as. Yeah.
it has to be a good song.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it has to just be a good song. And something that I realized in writing these lyrics is like, I have to believe what I'm singing. We met doing musical theater. I can pretend to believe in what I'm singing, but it's not it's not good.
Okay, that's fair.
So doing those acoustic sets, I actually really love doing them because I think it's fun to just kind of strip it back and be like, this is what the actual song is about.
Also, every now and then we'll do an acoustic thing, and I'm just like, this could be every day. Could just.
Because it's way more simple.
It's just so-
Not that it's easier, because
Yeah.
I have deep respect for amazing acoustic guitar players and stuff. Not that it's easier, but it is.
It's a lot less gear.
Yeah.
It's less technology that you're relying on.
Yeah, it's a lot like it's a lot less laptops that could break
Okay.
Yeah.
or iPads that could get smashed.
Well, that happened.
That did happen.
Still haven't fixed
Yeah.
it.
It's not salty or
Yep.
anything. Not
No,
salty.
it's fine. It's fine.
It's our fault for not putting a case on it, really.
That's victim blaming.
Okay.
That's a beautiful note to end on. If I didn't already say it, this is Waking April, Bethany, and Alex. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks for
today.
having
I
us.
For
appreciate it.
having us. This was so fun.
How can they find you if they want to check out the new album when you release it?
Facebook, Instagram, Instagram more than Facebook. Spotify so far. We'll see how.
We're not going to go there today.
That's I don't have time. But yeah, that's usually the main culprits of what we release, and we're gonna try to do some more music videos and stuff, and kind of build our YouTube roster as well. But
mostly we're on Instagram as Waking April.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Check them out. Instagram, Waking April. You guys are good. Cool.